Hey you guys, welcome aboard Crab Central Station. My name is Darcy, and in this video we are going to tell you guys exactly how we created these toppers in our big build. Let's get started. So the first thing that we need to understand is the bottom tank is what I call a base tank. It's this part right here. And that is the tank that you need to consider in the size for how many hermit crabs you have. In other words, adding a topper to your tank does not mean that you can increase the amount of hermit crabs you have, because the 10 gallons per crab suggestion or recommendation comes for safety in molting. And I know you guys have heard us say this before, but I just want to reiterate it in case this is your first time watching one of our videos. Your base tank needs to have enough space for each of your crabs to have 10 gallons. So if you have 3 crabs, you need a 30-gallon tank at least. You know, 6 crabs would be a 60-gallon and so forth. And again, that's so each crab can be safe as they molt. Now, the topper up here is just adding vertical climbing space, which is great enrichment for your hermit crabs. And they will absolutely love you for adding a topper so that they have a place to explore and climb. Our hermit crabs absolutely love to climb. They spend a lot of time up in the trees. It helps them to feel safe, especially if you can decorate those toppers in a way where there's some foliage or little coconut huts or wood hides where they can actually go in and feel safe during the day and night. So now that we have our vocabulary covered, let's get started on how we actually add these to our build. So at Crab Central Station, we only use Exoterra tanks for our toppers. And the main reason for this, you guys, is because they have doors on the front of the tank that open, which makes maintenance so easy. Remember, you need to be able to get in your tank to feed your hermit crabs, to change water, to kind of tidy up the substrate over time and pick up just leftover food that gets knocked out of the dish and things like that. And so you want to have easy access to your base tank in order to do that. And we have just found that Exoterra tanks do a great job at that. We have tried regular aquariums and inverting them to use as a topper. For us, you guys, it was a disaster. So you don't have any access to that tank. In order to get it into that area of your tank, you have to go down the base tank over here and then try to reach up with your hand over into that other inverted aquarium. And for us, we just couldn't clean it well enough. We couldn't make sure that condensation was off of the walls all the time. If decor was knocked down, we couldn't get in there to clean it up. It even just made it difficult to change water and food when we had that type of tank. So for us, it's a no-go. We do not like those whatsoever. It just makes maintenance so much harder. Also, ours tended to have, you know, it's a very humid environment. And so that humidity would create this condensation that would rise up to the top of those inverted aquarium tanks, and it would catch in little bubbles up there. And eventually that would have to fall like a rainforest effect, if you will. Well, after time and you know, that happening repeatedly on a daily basis, it saturated our substrate and caused a flood, which is dangerous for your hermit crabs. It requires a complete tear down and start over, which is a lot of work for you. And so for us, you guys, Exoterra terrariums are the go-to if you want to create a topper. So they come in a lot of different sizes. We tend to like the large size, one, because it's 18 inches deep, which matches up with the depth of our tanks perfectly, our base tanks. But they also have more height to them, which means the doors in the front are bigger, or taller, I should say, which again is just easier for your maintenance, especially when you're talking about replacing pool water and things like that. It just gives you a lot more access to that lower tank, and so we prefer those. Plus they're taller, so you have a lot more climbing space for your hermit crabs. So if you're going to be adding a topper, that's definitely why you're adding it, and so that's another benefit, something to think about. Exoterra tanks are expensive, no doubt. However, we have found every single one of our Exoterras used on Craigslist or Facebook Market. So be patient, keep your eye out, and I bet you'll find a good tank out there for the price that matches your budget. Before you guys start to decorate your toppers, I want to just really encourage you to go ahead and place an under the tank heat mat on the back of your topper. You may not ever need to use it because heat does rise. However, especially if you live in areas that get really cold in the winter, the heat from your base tank could all rise up into that topper, leaving the base tank really too cold for your hermit crabs. So placing a heat mat in your topper allows you to have that extra source of heat in the case that you would ever need it, which can help your base tanks stay warmer during those winter months. We even insulate our toppers ahead of time. You know, we placed that heat mat and then we wrapped it with a sunshade that you would put in your windshield of your car. And that way it's just ready for any kind of weather that might come this way. It keeps the heat all insulated inside that tank. And again, it's just really going to be difficult to add insulation to your topper once you have already put that on top of your tank. So I'd highly recommend you guys do that ahead of time. Okay, let's get to the fun part. Let's talk about how we decorated each of our toppers. I'm going to start with you guys over on our forest side of the tank in our very first topper that we created. The background that we used is actually just an aquarium background, and it's on the outside of the tank, just taped on the outside of the tank. On the inside, we used 100% silicone without any mold inhibitors, and we'll put a safe link in the description below on the right kind of silicone to use, you guys. I would highly suggest that you use clear so that you can't really see it. In our build, we ended up using white, and I kind of regret that and wish that I would have used clear. So for you guys, don't make that same mistake. But 100% silicone with no mold inhibitors is what we use inside of our tanks to adhere everything. And what we decided to put on our background for our very first topper was different types of wood. So in order to make this possible, you need to have a flat background, which we know wood isn't flat. And so you're going to need some type of saw. We used a chop saw. Of course, this can be very dangerous, so please use all safety precautions. Kids, please do not do this on your own. Have your parents help you. My husband did this for us, and so what we did is took Cholla wood and cork rounds, and we cut the Cholla wood in half so that first of all you have two pieces now, which is great, but now the back side is completely flat, so you can easily put silicone on the edges of that Cholla wood and then stick it right to the glass of your Exoterra tank. Same thing with the cork rounds. So they're a big round piece of wood. Sometimes you can find some that have some little dips in them, which is kind of cool. So when you go to pick out your wood, kind of be thinking what you want your background to look like so that you know how many pieces to get. But know that you can always cut them into smaller pieces. Our cork round pieces of wood, we could cut and use maybe 4 pieces out of that one piece of wood that we purchased. So keep in mind the size of your hermit crabs, although they will grow over time. If you use the cork rounds, you want to leave a depth in your cork round big enough so that your hermit crab can actually sit in there. I mean, that's the kind of idea. You're creating like a cave for them. Our crabs absolutely love this topper. It's probably their favorite topper of all of them, and I think they just really enjoy having that natural wood to climb and hide in. We always add a lot of foliage. So you're thinking about crabs climbing up in trees and you want them to feel comfortable, and so there would be natural umbrella tree, you know, the umbrella of the tree, the foliage of the leaves and everything. And so when we purchase our artificial plants that we want to put up in our topper, that's what we're keeping in mind. And so we use some cascading type plants and some big flowers that make, you know, have a lot of coverage and things like that. We also use the 100% silicone to attach those flowers to the tank as well. And the nice thing about Cholla wood is that they have a lot of holes already there for us, so you can just pick the spots that you really like to add that foliage and greenery to. Okay, the second topper that we created, we went ahead and added a box bush greenery background to the entire backing of the Exoterra topper. So these come in sheets, square sheets, and we got them off of Amazon. Of course, we'll put the link in the description below for you. But they have a flat back on them already, although it is gridded, and so it's a little bit difficult to work with, but not impossible. Again, you're gonna take your 100% silicone, and what we did is we just kind of piped it on the grid of those box bushes, and then we placed it on the entire back of the Exoterra. They're easy to cut to size, you know, they're not gonna fit exactly, and so we had to place several of those squares, you know, and cut the strips and things like that to cover the entire background, which of course you can change and make it work however you want. You could just put part of it greenery and part of it wood, you know, get creative. Like our toppers are just an example, but you know, the sky is the limit on what you could do for these things. But anyway, so we went ahead and filled up the entire background with those boxwood bush panels. And in order to get them to really adhere to the glass, we did have to place some heavy items on top of them to make sure that the whole back grid was actually touching the glass of the Exoterra. And so you could use some books or, you know, something that has a wide surface area that will hold those down. And we did wait 24 hours to allow that to really adhere to the tank before we did anything else. The next step is we took more wood, which we had cut to, you know, fit the different places on that background that we wanted. And I just took out little bits of that boxwood bush. They just easily pull out, and that would create an opening in the greenery. And I would then place the piece of wood right in that spot, and I would silicone it there in that place. So let's talk about our third topper. This one is over on our beach side of our build, and we wanted to do something completely different. You know, a lot of the reason that we did something different in each topper, you guys, was really to be able to come back and tell you guys, how did it hold up, how did we create it, and do the crabs use it? And so I'm here now to tell you guys that all three toppers have really been great, and they have withheld the hermit crabs, you know, trampling and climbing and chewing on them, and they've withheld to the humidity and heat within our tank build. And so I really couldn't complain. Like, all three of them have lasted a lot better than I had even anticipated, honestly. So in this third one, we decided to use Cork Flats, which is same thing as cork rounds, but they've made them flat. And Exoterra actually makes these for their tanks, which is perfect because they're just the right size. We don't have to cut them. They fit perfectly. You just order the one that is the same size as your Exoterra tank. And so we just put on the 100% silicone all over the back of the Cork Flat, and we placed it right on the Exoterra, and then we put some heavy objects on top just overnight for 24 hours so that we get a really good adhere to the back really, really well. Then we had this kind of cool idea, well, I think it's cool, this cool idea to create CoCo condos, you know, because you go to the beach and you rent a condo maybe for your weekend or your week at the beach. And so we wanted to create CoCo condos for our crabs. And so what we did is, in your bird section of pet stores, they sell coconut hides. They have a little ladder that come off of them. You guys have seen them in our tanks before, maybe you already use them, but they are round. And so that would be very difficult to adhere to a flat background. And so once again, you do have to use a saw. Be super careful because coconuts are really, really hard, and of course they're rounded, and so it makes it even more dangerous. We used a chop saw for ours, but what we did is we ended up sawing off the back of the coconut hide so that it would create a flat surface that we could then put the silicone on and adhere to the Cork Flats. Once we did that, we would place a heavy object on the top of the cork, on the condo against the cork, and we left it there for 24 hours so that our CoCo condos would really get you know, secured on there, because we knew that the hermit crabs would be climbing all over that background. So it worked out really, really well. You know, we were generous with our silicone just to help with that. I even went in and kind of piped in wherever there was a hole. I put in some extra silicone. They already come with the little ladders, which are so cute, and so the hermit crabs can actually climb on the Cork Flat very easily. They can climb on the coconut hut themselves, and they have the little ladders to help them get in and out. So it was just so super fun. We ended up putting some moss and lichens in there, which the hermit crabs love. Plus, if you need to raise the humidity in your tank, that's a great way to do that, is you can spray down that moss in those little coconut huts to help raise your humidity. And then of course we just added some extra greenery, again for the same reason that we did in our other tanks, just to help the hermit crabs feel like it's natural and they have extra coverage everywhere that they go. Now let's talk about how to actually attach your topper to the tank. So you have a couple different choices in how you do this. First of all, you might just have one base tank and your topper is going to cover half of it. So for example, you have a 75-gallon tank which has a middle brace. So normally you would have a glass top on this side of your tank and you have a glass top on that side of the tank. And so instead you're now going to have a topper on one side and then a glass top on the other, or two toppers, one on each side with that middle brace in between. If that's what you guys are doing, then the topper will fit perfectly if you just order the right size Exoterra tank. If you are using a topper to do what we have, which is to move crabs, being able to move the crabs, or the crabs to be able to climb from one base tank over to a different base tank, then that means your topper is going to be partly on this base tank, and then this middle section of your topper will be where the tanks come together, and then there will be an opening here where the topper is spanning into that next tank, okay? And so then your crabs can climb up this side and down over into this other tank. All right, well that means that on the outside of your topper, you're going to have to add a small piece of glass to fill in the gap between that topper you just added and the top to your tank, so that you can lift it off and do any kind of tank maintenance underneath. If you have the top to your tank go all the way to the topper itself, you're going to have a gap, which is going to let humidity escape and heat escape and things like that. So instead, just have a small piece of glass cut that will go right underneath the edge of the topper on both sides. And then your lid will go from the edge of that piece of glass to the edge of your tank, again on each side of the tank. This will allow you to be able to have access to the tank by lifting that lid. It will add extra support to your topper as it is spanning over those two tanks. The other thing that you are going to need is some adhesive expanding foam weather stripping. So that is what we use to help fill all those gaps between the topper and the base tank in order to keep the heat and the humidity inside. So we used a 1/2 inch. You can find this at...
I buy it from Home Depot.
And what you're going to do is turn your Exoterra upside down, and you're going to go ahead and put your foam weather stripping all along the edge of your Exoterra. Now one side of it is adhesive and the other side is the expanding foam. So peel back your paper and go ahead and put that directly on the edge of your Exoterra tank so that it's measured exactly. You want it every part of the edge of your Exoterra tank. Then you will very carefully turn that tank over on top of your base tank, wherever you're happening to place that, and that foam will expand to fill all the gaps. It's just perfect. It works out so great. And then the next step, you guys, is to use some duct tape. We use black duct tape because the trim on our tank is black, but if the trim on your tank is brown, of course they make brown duct tape. Or maybe you want to have all colorful and designs, of course duct tape makes all of that, you guys. So pick the duct tape out that works for you, and we place the duct tape in the gap where the topper meets the base tank. And we just put a strip of duct tape all the way around the topper to help secure it to that base tank, and also to just seal in any humidity and heat that might find its way out in between those two tanks. And then finally, you guys, once you have your topper, of course you want your crabs to be able to use that space. And so don't forget to add ways for your hermit crabs to climb up to their topper. You can use the ladders that you find in the bird section. We have those in all of our toppers. You can use large pieces of natural wood. You can also use any kind of decor, aquarium decor, or plants, whether they're artificial. You can get really creative in the different ways that you help your crabs climb vertically and have all of that extra enrichment. Here's a hack for you. And you can do this in your base tank. We have some right here actually. So you just get a tension rod and you can wrap that rod, because they are metal, which will rust in your tank over time. So wrap that tension rod using some natural jute rope, and we just tie it off at the end and put a quick zip tie on there so that it won't come untied. And then you just twist it until the tension rod fits your tank perfectly, and you can hang all kinds of things from those tension rods, you guys. We absolutely love them. We have them in all of our toppers, and we have them in several of our base tanks as well. And of course, just keep your eye on it. If at any time those tension rods start to rust, or that, you know, the twine starts to come unwound, they're very inexpensive and easy to replace. Again, we've had our tank up like this for almost 16 months now, and we haven't had to replace any of the things in our toppers or with those tension rods. So things are holding up really well, and the crabs love them, like I said. All right, you guys, so that is how you create a topper for your hermit crabs. I hope that this video has inspired you and given you some confidence to know how to go out and build a topper with vertical space for enrichment for your hermit crabs. As always, comment down below if you have any questions. We're happy to help you guys out. We really do try to answer all of the comments on our videos. We appreciate hearing from you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel so that we can continue to bring you a lot of education about crabs and continue advocating for the wild-caught crabs. If you haven't already, follow us on our social media. We do a lot of fun things over there: pictures, videos, tips, and lives. Until next time, you guys, happy crabbing.